Hey everybody, Tom Barnas, Stories from the 78. Thanks for hanging out with me here on the 78. I appreciate it. It is October in Chicago, which means you got playoff baseball. Yeah, right. Yeah, I know, but it's really happening. So we got to enjoy it. Playoff baseball, and we're getting ready for Halloween. So everybody's going on ghost tours and everything else. So why not cozy up with a great book by the fire, either outside or in your house? You got the backyard area and everybody's doing a little Oktoberfest. But a friend of mine, I want to tell you about her. Her name is Christina Henry, and she wrote this new book, The Place Where They Buried Your Heart, about a creepy house in a Chicago neighborhood. And I'll save all that stuff for Christina to share, but a creepy house in a Chicago neighborhood and what happens to kids when they go in. So it's perfect for this time of season. And I welcome Christina now to the 78. Christina, how are you?
Great. How are you doing?
You know what? It's October. It's my favorite month of the year. Halloween is coming up. So this is a perfect interview for me, of course, to talk to somebody who writes horror books, especially ones that have to do with Chicago and in Chicago, about a creepy house on a block that I think anybody growing up in anywhere can relate to. But in Chicago specifically, there's a lot of creepy houses on certain blocks, right? Like somebody who's lived in that house for as long as you can remember, and the house gets starts to fall apart and it becomes lore. And you kind of capitalize on that kind of thought with your new book that you just had coming out. Why don't you tell people the name of the book and all the fun stuff?
So the book is called The Place Where They Buried Your Heart. It is, as you said, set in Chicago. Specifically, it's set in Wrigleyville, which is a sub-neighborhood of a official neighborhood
Of Lakeview, yeah. Mm-hmm.
of Lakeview. And that's where I live, in Wrigleyville. And I wanted to write a book that was about this neighborhood that I love, and also about the kinds of people that live here, and the kinds of changes the neighborhood has gone through. And the plot of the story is that a girl named Jessie, she's 13, she's grounded, she's aggravated. Her little
All been
brother
there.
comes, yep, her little brother comes into her room and says, "Do you want to play a game?" And she says no. They get into an argument. She wants to get rid of him. So she says, "I dare you to go into the McIntyre house down the street," which is this abandoned house. Nobody's supposed to go in the house. It's been abandoned for years. And adults say it's dangerous because it's abandoned, right?
Sure.
Like, you're going to go
All
in there.
abandoned houses are, yeah.
Sure. You're going to fall through a hole, or you're going to step on a nail and you're going to get tetanus. But he goes into the house with his two friends, and 3 go in and only 2 come out. The house eats her brother, not in a metaphorical sense.
Yeah, that's definitely a house of horrors. No pun intended there. But yeah, I mean, that's what you're getting at. And it sounds very, and I mean this as a compliment, but a very Stephen King-esque type of vibe. You know what I mean? About a scary house in the neighborhood, like if people have read it, the whole thing. So it's my jam totally. And I'm very pumped that you use Wrigleyville, because it's a neighborhood that I wouldn't think of horror, but people don't realize that Wrigleyville today is very much a different Wrigleyville, even in the 90s. And I believe does the book take place now, or is it back in the 90s?
So it starts in the 90s, and then it comes forward in time, and it ends a little past the millennium. So early 2000s.
Yeah, much different Wrigleyville for sure. Because I remember as a kid going to Wrigley Field with my dad. I'm 45 years old. So, in the mid 80s, we were going to Wrigley, and we would get off the Addison stop, and it was a much different neighborhood. I mean, you used to have to pay a guy to watch your car and pay to park as well. Like, you pay him $5 to watch the car, and then it was $5 to park the car. And if you didn't pay the $5 to watch the car, you perhaps would have a broken window or a missing stereo in your car when you came back. So I imagine that was some of the thought process, perhaps, of like the neighborhood being what it was when you mentioned the different people that you like to focus on of that particular neighborhood.
Yeah, I mean, I've lived here I've lived in Chicago for 25 years, and I lived in Wrigleyville specifically for 20 years. And even in the time that I've lived here, the neighborhood has really, really changed.
Hmm.
I think it used to be, more of a working class neighborhood. And um, like a lot of neighborhoods in Chicago, I think some of the character that used to be here has been smoothed out by gentrification, which is also um, another evil in the book besides the monster house.
Well, if people have been on Clark Street now versus maybe in the year 2000, much
Hmm.
different vibe on Clark Street. You used to find anything and everything weird and cool and creepy on Clark Street. And some of those stores are just gone. Some are still there, not as many
Yeah,
as used to be, but it's still got a little bit. Now, a lot of them have spread out to Avondale or even up in Andersonville. Certain
yeah.
stores have spread out and then new ones come in. But either way, it's a fascinating idea of Chicago. Like, so where did you grow up?
I grew up in upstate New York. I'm from the Hudson Valley.
Okay. So
Yeah.
then, as far as like the genre that you write and what compelled you to find this story in the horror genre in general to then drop it into the neighborhood like Wrigleyville?
Yeah, so I mean, I was a kid who read horror stories. You mentioned Stephen King. I'm a Gen Xer. Like, we all grew up with Stephen King.
Sure.
It was the text that, we all read, was things like It or Christine or The Stand. And the reason why I write horror is because I love to read it. I mean, I also have written some fantasy books. I love to read fantasy also. I think as a writer, you gravitate to the things that you enjoy yourself.
Hmm.
But I think I really wanted to write about this neighborhood. I just, as a person who lives here, I don't actually normally write. I've written books set in Chicago. I've written 20 books now, actually. And now 9.5 of them have been set in Chicago.
Oh, that's a good
Um,
chunk.
so it's not that I haven't written about the city, but I always kind of write a little away from where I am. And I just wanted to write about this place where I live, the kinds of houses that are here, the kinds of, like I said, the kinds of people that lived here, the way, like, I think people think of cities as being really sort of like people come in, people come out, nobody stays, right? But
Yeah. Hmm.
that's not my experience. That's not even the experience of living on my block. When we first moved to this street, there was a gentleman down the street who was 101 years old. He had lived here his whole life, literally his whole life. He talked about, I think he actually ended up passing just I think a year or two before the Cubs won the World Series, but
Oh,
I think he was hanging on. That's what he was, the biggest Cubs fan. And he talked about being a kid in this neighborhood and going over to the park, and how they would hang around outside the gate, and at the end of the games sometimes a guy would come out and say to the kids who were hanging around, if you come inside and clean up the peanuts, right, the peanut shells, we'll give you tickets for tomorrow's game.
hmm.
So he used to tell stories like that, and this neighborhood was a part of him. I can't imagine for him how much the neighborhood had changed from the time when he was young, literally growing up here with Wrigley, um, you know, from the time he was, so small. But my experience has been that, like, people actually, they move to these neighborhoods and they stay here and they raise their kids here, and they, you know visit their grandkids, come and visit them here. And that's not, I think, as um easy. It's not I think the way outsiders think about cities, where it's like, oh, just people move in and out of apartments and it's people just come and go, but that's not really the way it is.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely feel like people think of cities, they just think of the tall buildings, and that's the
Yeah.
city. They don't realize that there's neighborhoods and popular or contrary to popular belief nationally at the moment,
Yeah.
Chicago very much is a city of neighborhoods where people look out for each other. I mean, I just had a block party this week. I live on the northwest side of the city, right by
Hmm.
Superdog, if you know where that area
Yes, I
is.
do.
Yeah, we had a huge block party, and you know, it's all people from all walks of life now. You know, I almost feel like even like the neighborhoods that are deemed like, oh, that's a fireman and police neighborhood. You know, like
Hmm.
yes, there still are a heavy concentrate, but there's all different kinds of people. I live in one of those neighborhoods. That's why I say it, because our block party had firemen, police, teachers, doctors, lawyers, you know, and
Hmm.
people move in and they stay and they develop community. They have block parties, which is a very Chicago. We didn't invent block parties, obviously, but
Right.
it's a very Chicago thing to do in the summertime, where you meet your neighbors that you, when you first moved in, and the people that don't say hi, do you meet them at the block party? You're like, oh, that person's not crazy. They're actually really nice, you know, because you meet
Hmm.
them, and then you know, everybody gathers together, and it was just a very Chicago thing. And I'm sure, just like you, or I'm sorry, not just, I don't know, but I'm sure like me,
Yeah.
you get annoyed by what people say about our city. You know, I do,
Yes.
certainly, because I'm like, you have no idea. You even said the neighborhood that you say is bad wrong. You didn't even say it correctly, you know? So,
Yes. No, I
uh,
agree. I get very frustrated, and um, I have a little pin that says STFU about Chicago. You don't live here. You know,
right.
that's what I think. I think when people come here, when they see not just the downtown, although I think we have a beautiful
We
downtown. I think we
do.
have amazing museums. We have wonderful architecture. There's just world class restaurants everywhere. Um, we have a very walkable city.
Hmm.
Our city, I'm always shocked by people who come here from other places and they say, oh, well, the city's so clean. I'm like, yes, it's clean. Like, we keep it clean. Like, we
Yeah.
don't just roll
It's not
around
a
in our
hell pit or
garbage.
hellhole that everybody says it is. And we have alleys that throw our garbage in versus like New York, where they throw it right out in the
Yes.
front. So, like, much different. Come on now. Right.
Um, but I think we have a beautiful city, and I think people are somewhat shocked to find that we have a beautiful city. Is it a city that has issues? Sure, all cities have issues, but
Hmm.
it's also a city of 2.7 million people in the Chicago proper, and then when you add the surrounding suburbs, it comes up to like 9 million people,
Yeah.
basically
We're
in the
not
northern,
small.
yeah, in the northern part of Illinois, and um, I think we're doing pretty good here.
I do too, you know, and despite everything that's going on in the news, it's, you know, you reminded every day of why our city's so great, or every
Hmm.
weekend when you hear about a festival going on or this or that, and you hear all the other stuff, and it can just bum you out. But it's great setting for a book, to raise a
Hmm.
family, for movie, even if the book is horror, right? Because horror's
Yes.
a part of life. So I'm curious, is the house that you have in the book,
Hmm.
is there a house that you had in your brain that you saw either in Wrigleyville or in another part of Chicago or anywhere else? Or is this just a combination of other houses that you've made into this one collective terrifying house?
So this is a house that I made up because the whole thing with the house is that it doesn't look like the other houses. So if you're, I mean, different neighborhoods have different architecture, but what's
Hmm.
very predominant here in my neighborhood are 2 and 3 flats,
Yep.
which are like either brick or graystone. We have a lot of graystone. I live in a graystone, 120-year-old building, and they have the Chicago entry, which is very specific, which is that the it has the steps going up, the porch is raised above the street level, which,
Hmm.
if you know anything about the history of Chicago, happened because we're on a swamp,
Hmm.
and the buildings used to sink here. And then it became an architectural feature of houses, even when we stopped sinking.
Yeah,
Um,
I have one too.
so right.
A
So
stoop.
it's a very specific kind of architecture, and you can kind of see where, these streets are sort of planned, where like an architecture firm or a construction firm came in and like built a bunch of houses that are the same, right?
Hmm.
Like,
Hmm.
they look the same. Just like when you go to some other neighborhoods and you see the Chicago bungalow, and there's just like rows of them.
That's my neighborhood.
Yeah, the
Bungalow Row.
bungalow.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Bungalow Belt.
Yeah. So, and what I wanted for this house was it for to not be the same. One of these things is not like the others. This
Hmm.
house is not the Chicago 2 flat It does not have the Chicago entry. It looks a little bit like a Queen Anne, but not quite. It's out of place. Everything about it is out of place. And one of the other things is that a lot of houses in Chicago were built with brick or gray stone because of the fire, because of the Great
Absolutely.
Chicago Fire. And this house is actually made of wood, which is also notable for the story. So it's kind of like everything is wrong about it. And you're supposed to have this sense from the beginning that this house itself doesn't belong.
Fantastic. And it's funny that as you're mentioning like the house that you have and the different houses, I swear in my neighborhood, we have a house as the house that you're describing.
The house that doesn't belong.
100%. Like I'll even take a picture and send it to you because it is so, because my neighborhood is bungalows everywhere. You know, it's kind of, this was like my area was like the suburb. So was Lakeview at one time, the suburbs,
right?
You know, but mine is, I'm further north and west of you. You know, I'm at Devon and Milwaukee, right? You know, my super dog up here. But most of the houses were kind of built the same time. My house is 1927, so almost 100 years old. But you go down the blocks and you walk, and in my neighborhood also is a lot of like angled streets because of Milwaukee Avenue and Elston.
Yep.
So we kind of had these angle action, right? So not totally grid, but you walk and you get to a corner. I swear to you, you walk to the corner and it's a house that's on a bigger lot. And it's all wood, and it is like Victorian era wood, and it looks like it has not been touched since the 1800s. You know, it's got the some concrete stairs with no railing going up to the top, and it's got the fence that's not it's like almost like the iron and wood fence that's not very high, and it's a corner lot, so it kind of goes around, and nobody knows who lives there. Everybody's like the kids in the neighborhood don't trick or treat at that house,
right?
So it's a real house in our neighborhood where my wife and I will go for a walk and be like, who the hell lives there? Like we lived on this neighborhood for a while, never see people coming in or going out, but the lawn's always mowed somehow. But I think the
Maybe
kids in the
just
neighborhood are
ghosts.
terrified. Yeah. So I can relate to this idea of a terrifying house in a neighborhood because we have one here, and the lights are never on in the winter. You know, like everybody's lights turn on at 4:30 in the winter. You know, if you're out,
Right.
if you're home, never. It's weird. And if there is a light, it's like one random light so far in the house, it barely illuminates the windows. It's so weird.
Okay, I need to know where this house is. I have to go
I'll send you
investigate.
the address, but it's like off of Mason and like Miami is like I think the cross streets. But either way, it's a very odd house. But I would be happy to send you a photo of it because it's just like it's just not one of these things is not like the other 100%. So
Right.
either way, you mentioned you have 20 other books that you've written.
Well,
right?
So Place Where They Buried Your Heart is my 19th book.
Oh, I'm sorry, 19.
That's about to come out. I have written 20. The next one will be out next year.
I see.
Yeah. So I've written a lot of books somehow.
Well, hey, it's fantastic, and you like you mentioned before, you got a lot of Chicago in your books, and you got other books that don't. Either way, if people want to learn more about what kind of author you are or what other books that you have, what's the best way for people to find your work?
So the most reliable thing, obviously, is I have a website. It's ChristinaHenry.net. If you're on Threads, Instagram, I'm there at author Christina Henry. All one word, lowercase. And I'm also on Blue Sky, but I'm not using it a ton. So you can seek
Same
me
here.
out there, but the news might be intermittent.
But the hardcover of the book comes out on the 4th, right?
For November, yes.
Of this one right here. Let me see if I can get there. We are. Then I imagined will you do like doing any tours or any book signings coming up here that we can tell people about?
Yes, I am touring for the book. The book launch is going to be at 3 Avenues Bookshop,
Nice.
Which is at the intersection of Southport, Lincoln, and Wellington.
Right in your neighborhood.
Yes, they are my local. I don't just do book launches there; I actually shop there. And Nick Medina, who's also a local author, he wrote Sisters of the Lost Nation, Indian Burial Ground, and his most recent book is The Whistler. He's going to be in conversation with me. You should also check out his books because he's pretty awesome. And I think it's going to be a great event, and I really hope that people come out, support local bookstores.
Absolutely. I mean, I knew another author. Her name is Connie Fairbanks, and
Mm-hmm.
she has written books where they're only available in bookstores. She's like, no, they need to go to the bookstore if they want to buy my book. I was like, whatever, that's up to you. But I just interviewed her not too long ago. I went on a little tour of the tours that she offers through like the Chicago History Museum. So she's wonderful, and that's what I wanted to ask you about before we wrap it up. Is it feels like the scene in Chicago, I think, is very underrated as far as authors that live
Mm-hmm.
here and work out of here. And especially in the horror genre, you are one of two ladies that have written horror novels that have come out this year alone. You know, there's another author who lives in Humboldt Park. She has another book
Cynthia
that,
Palaio.
yeah. So like,
Yes.
what do you think it is about Chicago that just, I mean, I know you probably felt this way before moving to Chicago, but either way, it's cultivated what you written about in the last 20 plus years. Is there
Mm-hmm.
something about Chicago that gives you like this way that you want to express yourself?
I think that people think of Chicago as a young city, and of course, like compared to like any European city, we are young, and we are young compared to like a Boston or a Philadelphia. But I still think anywhere people have lived, um, can be haunted,
Sure.
because people leave, their experiences and their memories behind in some way. And I don't just mean like metaphysically, I mean, people leave behind objects and places
Hmm.
and all these kinds of things. And I think that when you have a place that has history, and Chicago has a ton of history, for a young city, we've sure had a lot going on here.
And we
Um,
still do. It's still happening.
um, and I think that it's just ripe for an author's imagination, to like take hold of things that have happened. You mentioned Cynthia. Cynthia
Hmm.
writes books that are like very often have their roots in like actual historical happenings in
Hmm.
Chicago. And her books are wonderful too, so people should also check them out. And we have,
Yeah.
as far as like a book scene, we do have a tremendous book scene here. There's a lot of authors. There's a ton of independent bookstores here.
Yeah.
And I really, and just so I can get up on my soapbox for one little
Oh,
second, I
please do.
really
Go for it.
want to encourage people to go to their local bookstore, because your local bookstore is owned by someone who lives in your community, who pays taxes in your community, and is a part of the fabric of your neighborhood. And if you don't want everything in your neighborhood to become, to end up looking like a mall, you
Mm.
need to support the local businesses here. Um, and a lot of times, you will find that those stores have wonderful events. You can build wonderful community there as well. It's not just a place to shop.
Absolutely. And it's just a place to feel like you belong to, right? Like it's just,
Yes.
I'm sure I lived in your neighborhood when I moved to the city. I live right next to the Taco Bell that before they tore it
Before
down,
you
the
tour
monster.
it
Yeah, the
down.
old Taco
Yeah.
Bell, the old school. I lived in the blue house that is like
Hmm.
one house in from that. I lived there for my first few years in the city, and then up in Ravenswood for a long time, and then up where eventually now up this way. But when you move to the city and you become
Hmm.
a part of something it's so hard to explain to people who are not from Chicago to be a part of a neighborhood from in Chicago. It's
Hmm.
almost like a badge of honor. It's almost like you want to get it
Hmm.
tattooed on your body, which I might have or not, but either way, you know what I mean? Like I have the Chicago flag on my
I was
body
gonna
and
say a lot of people here have the Chicago flag. Yeah, we
and I'm
really
wearing
love our flag.
I'm wearing your neighborhood shirt right now
Mhm.
because this is a Cubs shirt, but it says the
Yes.
77 on it. So yeah, I just Chicago is just a very great character in itself. It can crush you, it can lift you up, it can make you feel loved, and everything in between. But at the end of the day, when you see that skyline for the first time in a while, it's like you've
Mhm.
seen it for the first time all
Yeah.
over again. You know what I mean? It's just wonderful. So I'm glad that there are so many good things happening in the city. And one last question before I let you
Hmm.
go. Actually, two. One
Okay.
of them, how you feeling about the Cubs? You live in the neighborhood. Are you a New Yorker baseball fan or are you
No,
a Cubs
I'm
fan?
a Cubs fan.
Okay.
I was a little upset after Saturday,
Wow.
but
That was the day of our block party. Everybody was like
but, but
literally
I
drowning in beer.
but I think that they can pull it together. They have beat Milwaukee quite a few times this season, so
Yeah.
I think this is perfectly doable. I do think the issue, as it has been for the Cubs all season, is that their pitchers are tired. Our pitchers
Yeah.
are tired because our rotation has not been healthy since April.
Yeah. Since Justin Steele went down, right?
Right. So it's just been, I think it's been hard on them. I'd like to see them get past Milwaukee. That said, given all the injuries, I'm not confident that they can get past. I think my feeling, my whatever, is that Philadelphia is going to figure it out and beat LA.
Oh, that'd be great. I hate the
But
Dodgers.
well, everybody does except for Dodgers fans.
Yeah, that's true.
So, but I'm not confident. I mean, I'm not confident they could get past Philadelphia or LA. I'm not sure how much the starting pitching rotation or the bullpen can take. I think we've just had so many injuries. Like Cade Horton going down with that broken rib was really disheartening.
Yeah, Cato, and then Matthew Boyd laying an egg on the first game of the
Which
division
was
series.
unexpected, honestly, but
Yeah, I mean, it was bad. It was not
yeah.
good. I mean, they were down 6-1 in the first inning. I think the first inning took an hour. It was terrible.
Yeah.
But
so
they're in the playoffs, so
they're
that's
in the
good
playoffs.
news. So that
I know
was
we keep thinking like it's more like 2015 than 2016.
Yeah,
Like
it's got a
next
little
year
bit of
might
that
be the
vibe.
year.
But the
Yeah.
2015 team did go to the National League Championship Series. A lot of people forget that. We went to 3 in a
Yeah.
row. So
Yeah.
it would be nice. But you know what? If we lose to a team, I guess I wouldn't hate that we lose to the Brewers, only because then I want the Brewers to win the whole thing. If you're going to lose to the Brewers, then win the whole thing. Beat the Dodgers, beat Philly, beat whoever the American League has.
I mean, how do you feel about what's coming out of the American League? I mean, like just looking at the teams that are in it, like what are you thinking? To me, it kind of seems like it's anybody's game on the American League side.
Well, yeah, I mean, the Yankees don't look like they're going to advance. They're down 0-2 to the Blue Jays, but I feel like the Blue Jays are always a team that should be good, and then they kind of lose it at some point. So I feel like I really want the Tigers to come out of the American League just because I'm a Midwest guy, man. I want the Tigers.
Yeah.
I wouldn't mind if it was the Tigers and Cubs in the World Series. I believe it. Did they ever play each other? Maybe in 1932 they played each other. Or 45, maybe it was 45. I can't remember, but I wasn't there, so I don't remember. But I'm pretty sure they played each other one time in the World Series. And or you know what, if the Cubs lose, then I wouldn't mind seeing Milwaukee and Detroit, just because I think it'd be a cool Midwest World Series.
Yeah, we want this to be in the Midwest. We don't need any of these California teams.
No,
or Seattle. Enough. I mean, I'm sorry, people, West Coast people, but like this commute does not work for Midwestern teams.
No. Switching gears, before I let you go, I just wanted to ask, you brought up a couple of things about hauntings and people leaving things behind. Do you believe when you're writing, or just in your experience, like because Chicago does have a fair number of haunting stories, ghost stories. It's Halloween, so everybody's kind of in the spirit. I'm sure you've seen every horror movie that there is when it comes like Amityville Horror or the Conjuring series and stuff like that. Do you believe in that kind of like ghost stuff, or do you believe that like in the Conjuring, it's the objects that are haunted that then infest the house, like the Annabelle doll or something like that? Do you believe in any of that stuff, or is it just like
So I write about this stuff, but I'm in real life more of a skeptic. But I do think that we convince ourselves of things, I think if you go into a house and you expect it to feel haunted, it will. I think our brains are incredibly powerful. I'm not convinced that Annabelle is actually a haunted doll, but I will say, if I did believe in such things, I'd put that doll in the fireplace. I would not be,
Right, I wouldn't keep it in a locked box where everybody can come and look at it. I mean,
just it out of an abundance of caution, I think maybe you should burn the haunted object.
Fair enough. Yeah, go back to when people talk about how always the books are always better than the movies. And I think
Mm,
there's a lot of truth to that just based on the writing of the book, right? The book is just better. Hollywood kind of screws it up if the original author is not included, or if the author doesn't know how to direct a movie. You know what I mean? And we
hmm
can use, there's been plenty of Stephen King movies that were terrible. And you read the story, and you're like, why is this the story that I'm reading in a book? And that's the movie that's garbage. But I think part of it is what you were saying before. The brain is very powerful. And
Yeah.
I remember like the Blair Witch Project coming out. Do you remember
Yeah.
when that came out, when people
I
thought it was
do.
real?
Hmm.
So there was like a period of like 3 weeks when everybody thought it was like real because it was like the first found footage movie. And I remember going to it being terrified because you thought it was real. And even though there was nothing scary visually in the movie, except
Yeah.
for the guy standing in the corner, that scene
Hmm.
scared the crap out of me because it was my brain making it scarier. And I thought it was brilliant, actually, that they use everybody's minds to make it scary, and it worked. And
Yeah.
like good writing does that without even having to try hard. It's just part of the story, and all of a sudden you're terrified and you got to put the book down, right?
Hmm. Yeah, no, I remember when Blair Witch Project came out, and part of the reason why people thought it was real was because they did that fake documentary that was
Hmm.
related to the film. I don't know if you remember that. It was on like Sci-Fi Channel or
Yeah.
something, and it was supposed to be like, this is like the stuff they found in the house after these students disappeared, and they made this sort of like it was a fake documentary for their fake documentary.
It was
um
brilliant.
yeah, which sort of like added to this. People were like, wait, did this really happen? But it's hard to explain, I think, sometimes to people who didn't experience that film for the first time in a theater when it
Piper's
first
Alley.
came out.
That was my
Yeah.
experience. Piper's Alley, right at North Avenue, and it scared the hell out of me. So it was
Mm-hmm.
fantastic. Uh, Obviously, I can talk to you all day, and you don't have all day to talk to me, and I understand that. But it's been a pleasure talking to you about your new book, "The Place Where They Buried Your Heart," coming out here on the 4th. But people can, I imagine, they can probably pre-order if they want to somewhere and somehow, and
Yes.
then find you on the website and find where they can see you in person at the book signing that you have coming up and everything else. But
Yes,
pleasure
they
talking
absolutely
with you.
can. Thank you so much for having me. It's been super fun.
No problem.